Welcome to our Finance Toolbox series, provided by Frost Brown Todd and its affiliate FBT Project Finance Advisors and presented on CDFA TV. The title of this episode is Financing Environmental Infrastructure. My name is Jason Halligan, and I'm a government services and public-private partnership attorney with Frost Brown Todd. Joining me today is Joe Reedy from Thrive Companies and Carrie Cecil from Frost Brown Todd. Joe is a partner, general counsel, and VP of development for Thrive Companies. Joe has multiple roles in the operations and real estate development aspects of the company. He oversees the legal needs of the company with particular attention to real estate acquisition, pre-development, public funding, and government regulation, especially on environmental land use matters. As a VP of development, he is currently the project lead for the 21-acre Founders Park mixed-use development just south of the Ohio State University campus in Columbus, Ohio. He also has responsibility for the acquisition and pre-development for the Quarry Trails project, a 600-acre mixed-use development in a limestone quarry, which will include a 43,000 square foot office building, 331 units of condominiums and single-family homes, 894 apartment units, and 32,000 square feet of commercial space, surrounded by the new 220-acre park. Mr. Reedy is a member and former chairman of the Columbus District Council of the Urban Land Institute, and a former president of the Board of Trustees of Rebuilding Together Central Ohio. Carrie's practice focuses on public and project finance. She has served as bond counsel, issuers counsel, underwriters counsel, bank or purchasers counsel, and disclosure counsel in municipal finance transactions. Her practice also includes the financing and development of infrastructure and economic development projects, including tax increment financing and tax abatement structures. In addition, Carrie works with clients to prepare post-issuance compliance procedures for issuers and borrowers of tax-exempt bonds and assists with post-issuance contract review.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you to Frost Brown Todd and CDFA for inviting me to participate in this presentation. Many communities have vacant, blighted properties, often with significant environmental legacies like contaminated soil, groundwater, and asbestos in buildings. These are commonly known as brownfields. And this Quarry Trails project that we'll be talking about today is a brownfield site. Quarry Trails is a public-private partnership between our company, Thrive, the Columbus and Franklin County Metro Parks, and the city of Columbus to redevelop this 600-acre brownfield site, which is a former stone quarry, into a new 80-acre mixed-use development with a 220-acre metro park in northwest Columbus, Ohio. This is a first-of-its-kind project in Ohio, and looking at the first of my slides, I'll just try and orient us a little bit, especially for people who are not familiar with Columbus, Ohio. As I mentioned, this is a brownfield site, and Thrive Companies is a brownfield infill developer. The various titles on the page that are in orange are current projects of our company and all have some amount of a brownfield component to them. If you look in the upper left, you'll see the red border for the Quarry project. It is north of Trayview Road. The west boundary is the Scioto River. That's an important aspect of the projects that we do take on as we look for projects with close ties to existing waterways or other green spaces. The west boundary is Dublin Road. North boundary is Scioto Darby Road. Looking at the north end of this image, you'll see there's an existing stone quarry still in operation there. And that's a really nice thing for us as the landowner, since we enjoy the royalties from the stone that's being mined from the site. The new park and our development are in the lower 2/3 of the quarry space, and our 80-acre development is on the east and south of the green areas in the lower portion of the site. The areas which look to be two quarry lakes, that's part of the new park, and the immediately north or middle area is also another part of the park itself. The quarry was first opened in about 1840, and from approximately 1950 until 1974, after the stone was mined in the southern portion of the site, it was used as a solid and hazardous waste landfill, and unfortunately was never properly capped under Ohio law. Over the years, Mother Nature had done her thing, and so it was densely wooded, but still not a properly capped landfill and not something that would be safe for development. When we got into contract to purchase the property in 2015, there was no infrastructure on the site at all. And with more than 90 acres of abandoned former landfill, we had a significant cost to address in terms of environmental cleanup. We also had significant costs to bring infrastructure to the site. And last, if not least, this portion of Northwest Columbus had largely been ignored for traffic infrastructure for many decades. And the traffic infrastructure didn't support even the existing traffic in the area, let alone the thousands of new residents that we would be bringing to the area. So really at the start of this, we knew that without significant public investment for the environmental cleanup and construction of basic infrastructure, this project just wouldn't be economically feasible. We really needed to partner with our local government, much as other developments do, to bring infrastructure to the site and also to address the environmental issues. As we were in our initial due diligence period, we got together with the city of Columbus and negotiated an economic development agreement. And principal to that was the city's agreement to provide tax increment financing, coupled with various real estate property tax abatements, which would provide the revenue stream necessary to construct the new infrastructure. The Ohio Water Development Authority is a creature of Ohio law, which is a finance agency that has low interest loans. They agreed to provide $5.5 million in loans for the clearing, grading, and capping of the former landfill, and also for geotechnical stabilization of the ground so that we could build on it. Solid waste, as it decomposes, tends to settle, and we needed to make sure that we had a geotechnically stable property in order to build on it. Because really, our plan for this site was to build on the former landfill and leave the unimpacted areas as the new park. With the development agreement in place and Ohio EPA's approval of our plans for the redevelopment and cleanup of the property, we were able to close on the purchase in February of 2018. As Jason mentioned, it's a mix of uses. And my next slide illustrates some of those uses. It shows our development footprint and then nestled around the park and the river. We really were just starting from scratch in terms of installing basic infrastructure and making this site whole. We were very fortunate that the city of Columbus had sufficient water and sewer in the vicinity that we were able to tap into. So really, we were talking about internal infrastructure and not significant infrastructure just to get services to the site. And another key part, though, of all of this new infrastructure construction is that with the income generation from our private development, we knew that we could generate the revenue for the TIF bonds to provide for this infrastructure. And we early on entered into a development agreement with the metro parks such that we would bring the infrastructure to them so that they could spend their dollars on park improvements rather than on basic infrastructure. And that's a key part of the public-private partnership that we have in the creation of this new park and our private development. It was also a key thing for the city of Columbus. Now, while the city of Columbus was certainly on board with the new park and with the financial incentives that we needed for our project, we also needed to give something back to the city in return for that. And the main return, in addition to the future taxes from this site, was our agreement to allocate 10% of our initial apartments to affordable housing in the first phase of the construction, and in all subsequent phases, 20%, with 10% being at 80% AMI and 10% being at 100% AMI. While that wasn't a requirement at the time for the city of Columbus, it's something we were moving towards, and it was also something that we as a company were happy to do. Really, the significant increase in property taxes is ultimately the carrot for the city. But the city and the park district have also made a point of trying to make sure that there would be green space, park space within a 5-minute drive in all parts of the city of Columbus. This project fills that gap for the northwest side of Columbus. So that was another important aspect of the project. As I mentioned, there's a lot of project funding that we needed from the city of Columbus and other sources. I have a summary slide up now that shows a list of these project funding opportunities that we took advantage of. First, I mentioned an on-site tax increment financing district, and that's really to fund the new roads, water, and sewer infrastructure. The city of Columbus had already created an off-site tax increment financing district in the area, which was used to bring sewer just outside of the boundaries of our site. And we got the city to agree to expand that TIF district to help fund the greatly needed traffic improvements for the area. While we're putting in a new traffic signal at our main entrance off Trayview Road and funding that with our TIF, the additional infrastructures to the north, south, east, and west of the project also need significant improvements. And this TIF program, the offsite TIF program, will be used to fund those improvements. In Ohio, when an owner of a property works with the state of Ohio to clean up a brownfield, once the state of Ohio approves that brownfield cleanup through what's called a covenant not to sue, the director of EPA issues a letter to our tax commissioner, which provides the property owner with a brownfield tax abatement. That's a 10-year, 100% abatement of the increased value of the property following its cleanup. And let me tell you how that works, though. So we purchased all of the property, all 600 acres, for around $12 million. The clean value of this property in our residential development and the surrounding mixed-use areas, that value is probably close to $1 million an acre. So for this initial 10-year period, the tax value is frozen at what we paid for the whole 600 acres, not the improved value of the property after its cleanup. And as you'll find when we talk about the TIFs a little bit more, That's a really important component. Community reinvestment area abatement is another abatement provided by the City of Columbus. That's a 15-year, 100% property tax abatement for new residential construction. Since it's a mixed-use project, we also received an enterprise zone abatement, which is a 10-year, 75% abatement on the new office building that we're constructing in the project. And the office construction was something that the City of Columbus really wanted to see as part of this project. They wanted to see new jobs in this development, not just more residential beds. The next thing that we did, though, is we also created what's called a new community authority, and that's a creature of Ohio law. The way the Ohio statute works is a local political subdivision, for us, the City of Columbus, passed legislation authorizing the creation of this community development group or community authority, which then acts as its own political subdivision for all of the land that are within that project. And the initial community development area is our 80-acre initial development piece, but the legislation authorizes us to expand as we move into additional phases of the project. New community authorities have the ability to sell bonds. They also have the ability to assess a community development charge on our private property, which is a way to guarantee income or revenue to pay for the TIF bonds that are being used to fund the community center, bike trails, and other public improvements. This project had another kind of different wrinkle to it in that we entered into what's called a utility cooperative agreement with the City of Columbus. This is something that we got the city to do on one of our other former landfill projects. Really, when we sat down with the city and explained to them how Ohio EPA regulates development on landfills, and talked to them about the potential risks associated with methane gas and other issues unique to landfills, the city agreed that they would be more than happy to let us build and maintain the infrastructure through our new community authority, and act as a separate buyer of the city's water and sewer services, much as many of the suburbs of Columbus do already. So under this agreement, the community authority is able to purchase water and sewer services at essentially their wholesale cost from the City of Columbus and turn around and charge the regular retail rates that Columbus would charge its customers and keep the net revenues to be used either for debt service or for maintenance on the infrastructure owned by the community authority. As I mentioned earlier, key to our ability to clean up the former landfill is a brownfield loan, $5.5 million at 2.56% from the Ohio Water Development Authority. And our OWDA also has a program for alternative stormwater infrastructure. That program is only available to political subdivisions. So again, since we had a new community authority at this site, new community authorities are eligible to take out a low interest loan for stormwater infrastructure. And really what we're talking about is pervious pavement, greenways, and other alternative ways to treat and manage stormwater rather than simply dumping into a pipe and flushing it into the nearby river. Under that program, we were able to take down a $3.1 million loan at a 1.65% interest rate. And both of these loans are 10-year terms. And so it's a significant financial component to our capital structure. And even more importantly, the OWDA loans are subordinate to the construction financing that we will be using at the property. The last slide that I have shows a current image of the site. As you can see, we've got a road bridge already installed. That's on the right of the image. To the left, we're constructing another bridge that will carry a pedestrian walkway and our sanitary sewer lines. In the background, you can see elevator towers rising. This was taken in early October. It's good to know that we've been progressing and we're moving along full speed ahead with the project.
All right, thanks, Joe. That was great. One of the initial questions that comes to mind to me is, how did you arrive at this funding arrangement?
Practice. Seriously though, our company has been doing this type of work since 2002. And the city of Columbus has really been a great dance partner with us. They understand the nature of the brownfield projects that we've been doing. They understand the intense capital needs of projects like this, and they're open to working creatively with us to bundle the multiple programs together in order to get the project to pencil.
And do you always need so many funding sources in a big project like this?
No, this project is unique because of its size and because of the extraordinary lack of infrastructure. Our typical brownfield project is 20 to 30 acres and usually has significant existing infrastructure on site. Usually the major financial investment to get to kind of a starting place is the cost for the environmental cleanup. So this is one, and as I mentioned, this is another of multiple landfill projects that we've done. And actually it's the third landfill project that our company has participated in over the years. It's something that we've kind of developed an expertise at.
One of the things that strikes me about this project, though, is that you are combining a lot of different tools in the capital stack. Obviously, you had an existing familiarity with the city of Columbus, and you talked about kind of anticipating some of their requests as you went through the process, but were there any particular challenges as you were kind of navigating the public portion of the project and putting together the capital stack that were instructive, or things you'll take away from this project to use on the next one?
Yes, traffic. While we knew that the area had largely been ignored just from our own driving to the site as we were doing our due diligence, when we started meeting with the area commission, which is a creature of Columbus government, and with local citizens groups, early and often they stressed the need for traffic improvements. And there were some factions that were even trying to hold our project hostage to solve these almost generational traffic issues on the back of our relatively small project. Fortunately, the city readily acknowledged that we should not be responsible for addressing pre-existing traffic needs That's why they were willing to expand the existing TIF district to help fund offsite improvements. But they did expect us to use a significant chunk of our TIF dollars for the new traffic signal and turn lanes to come into our site.
Yeah, that's something I've experienced with clients of mine, that navigating and figuring out exactly what the traffic needs are going to be, having your traffic studies ready, coordinating with the state, coordinating with the locals. There's a lot of things to be done up front in the process to figure out what the needs are, how they're going to be financed, and where each party's contributions are going to be to the process is always an interesting part of a project to work through.
And Carrie, that really kind of brings to mind something. I mentioned that we got into contract on this property in 2015 and didn't close on it until 2018. We started meeting with the public on the project in early 2016. And we spent over 2 years laying the groundwork with the community so that they could understand why we needed all of these significant public finance tools in order to make this project work. And at the same time, the Park District was going to the ballot in November of 2018 for an expansion and extension of its 10-year operating levy. And so we actually worked with the Park District and filmed videos and created an internet and other media marketing campaign that we both shared to educate the public about this project and its value to the community. And that was very key to the good reception that we got with local government for our components of the project, and the almost 75% favorable ballot for the Park District's operating levy.
Yeah, I think that's terrific. I've had clients that have had to, get outside consultants to help with media strategies, because it is one of those things that's kind of interesting with a project that is this large. There's a lot of public interest. People want to know what's going on. They want to be informed, and kind of navigating together with a public body as you're going through that is always something that not all developers anticipate when they get started on a project, especially if they've not been through and done as many projects as your company has. But it's definitely one of those key parts of putting together a large project that's combining public and private sources.
Yeah, I would really stress that as one of the key things for successful developments.
Well, Joe, can you provide some additional background on how the TIF and the tax abatements work together when determining the capital stack and future repayments?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we have the brownfield tax abatement, we have a residential tax abatement, and then we have a tax abatement for the office construction. Now, what we do then is, through the charges that the community authority can assess, we charge back to the private property much of the abated taxes in order to provide the revenue stream for the TIF bonds. And as the new development comes out of the ground and the value grows, it quickly will surpass the minimum service payment that's assessed to the property, and really, is not noticeable. But particularly for the early years of the project, being able to recapture the abated taxes is key to making this work.
I do think that's interesting. Obviously, TIF is something that can vary a lot depending on the state and the local environment that you're in and the statutes that you're working within. My practice is primarily centered in West Virginia, and it's interesting because while we do have the flexibility to use an assessment structure, typically my clients have shied away from it because they have seen, if they're doing a phased development, if they don't know the exact timing of when future phases are going to come online, they've got to kind of look at, okay, do we want to take on the risk of, if this doesn't move on the schedule we're anticipating, that we're responsible for those assessments until the projects come online? Or do we want to have kind of a TIF bond we're holding up front and we'll fund those costs and be subject to a future reimbursement, or to refund those bonds, once the development comes online? So it's an interesting strategy, and it's a little bit kind of state dependent on which way you go with that. But obviously it's worked great for this particular development, since you had such a good hold on how different aspects would be coming online and your timing, it sounds like.
Well, some of it was fortuitous. Some of it really was by design. So I mentioned, the challenges that we had with traffic. And as we worked with the city and the community, they asked us to commit to an initial phase of development based on our initial traffic studies, while larger, more regional traffic studies could be completed, providing additional information. So we had to structure our initial TIF bonds to work from just the first phase of development. That ended up being a blessing as well, though, in that the city agreed that the 30-year life of the TIF would reset for the subsequent phases of the development, so that could basically start over as we moved into different phases. So each phase is kind of self-sufficient.
Yeah, that's wonderful. We do not have that statutory flexibility in West Virginia, and I have clients that would be very excited if they did.
Well, Joe, how difficult was it to receive the loans from the Ohio Water Development Authority?
Actually, that's kind of a hidden gem in Ohio. The brownfield and stormwater programs have significant amounts of money, but very few people are making use of them. Now, it was somewhat of a necessity that we went this route with the brownfield loan. In previous years, Ohio had the best brownfield grant program in the United States, where you could get grants of up to $3 million per project. That after a change in the governor's office a number of years ago, that program went away. So rather than grants, we needed to look for low interest loans. But I've never had a project that was told no, as long as it had good merit. And I'm not aware of the program really setting a cap in terms of available funding. Again, the alternative stormwater loan program, that's only available to local government. But while there was a cap of $5.5 million for the brownfield loan, if I had larger stormwater costs than what I have here, I could have applied for a larger sum, a larger loan, and there really wasn't a cap on it.
That's really interesting. In Kentucky, it sounds like our closest equivalent is a Kentucky Infrastructure Authority, and they have very limited funds and high demand on those funds. For the water project, they have around $50 million a year as a cap, and wastewater about $75 million a year. But the need far exceeds that. So the American Society of Civil Engineers estimated that there's about an $8 billion need for water infrastructure in Kentucky, and about $6 billion for wastewater. And those amounts aren't going to cover the true need there. So we're starting to see some communities that are exploring untraditional financing arrangements, but it sounds like the situation is very different there in Ohio.
Ohio's program is an outgrowth of the US EPA Water Pollution control revolving loan fund program that was started many decades ago. But it's grown and grown and grown in Ohio. And actually, while we couldn't get a water construction loan until we had an existing ratepayer base within the project, we've been told by OWDA that they would be open to providing permanent financing for our sanitary and drinking water system once it's installed and operating. So we may yet expand the list of tools here at this site, depending on how things go in the future.
So how much demand do you see for similar projects on environmentally impacted land?
Well, Ohio has thousands of brownfield sites, and there are hundreds of thousands of brownfield sites throughout the United States. But not surprising, as with any real estate development, location is key. And so we've looked at brownfield sites that make good urban infill sites. Fortunately, we are aware of some others that we will look to work on, and we expect to be able to use many of the same tools on these sites moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's pretty consistent with my experience. My clients are typically developing in areas where, there's formerly mined lands, for instance, or, they're more focused on finding sites that are in locations that will fill needs for, their development and the communities that they're in. But it has led to some interesting opportunities. They've definitely been utilizing TIF. Now, what's interesting is in West Virginia, we also have a program where you can create excise tax districts that allow you to leverage sales tax increases within a district to do improvements. So I've had clients use a sales tax district to fund a new interchange. West Virginia University had a new baseball stadium that was financed from excise tax bonds. But it is definitely a process where they're kind of looking and evaluating of what tools are available to develop a challenging site. One of the things that was kind of interesting is one of the TIF projects was a former reclaimed mine site, and the client ended up determining that because they were installing a new road, they were able to mine some of the existing coal and sell it and use the proceeds to help buy down some of their development costs. So there are challenges and opportunities, I think, when looking at these types of sites going forward.
And what are the most significant hurdles in developing these projects?
Well, for us, it's really two-pronged. Since we're typically doing brownfield sites, first and foremost, it's understanding what the public health and safety considerations are for remediating the existing environmental issues. That's prong one. Prong two is building the base of support within the community for what we want to build so that we get the zoning that we need, as well as the financial incentives that we need.
Thank you, Joe and Carrie. And thanks everyone who's watching for joining us today. This video was provided by Frost Brown Todd and its affiliate FBT Project Finance Advisors and presented on CDFA TV.